Okay, we're back with Dr. Christian Heim. Dr. Christian and I spoke, for those of you that listened back in May. On May 11th, we released an episode with him called The Universe Inside of Your Head. And we talked extensively about depression, anxiety, and suicide, things of that nature. Today's more of a follow-up part 2 of that conversation. And it's really about how to talk to somebody at the office that's going through a tough time. So Dr. Christian is, again, a clinical psychiatrist from Queensland, Australia. Thank you for taking the time to be with me again.
That's all right, Dave. It's a real privilege to be here again. And thanks for doing a follow-up on what I consider to be a really important topic.
And I'm happy to do it. You had actually, we had gone back and forth after our last conversation, and you had said, hey, I want to get into more detail about how do you actually initiate communication with somebody that might be going through a tough time, it's not easy. So I'm going to let you kind of kick us off, and then we'll go back and forth.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, because our last conversation, look, it was a great conversation, Dave, but what happens with conversations, we get onto generalities and we get to the big picture, and I hate to say it, but things like that can be really entertaining and make us think, but we really want to have a conversation that could make a big difference in somebody's life, okay? And look, in today's corporate world, there's not much time for people's feelings. We're all afraid of getting it wrong. And yet there are people out there that are suffering, and that includes ourselves. And so I thought that we could revisit this topic by looking at some of the specific things that we could do to help people out in that situation.
Give me an idea that we can build off of here. Let's just say, there's some, it's obvious that somebody's going through a tough time.
Yeah.
What do you do about that?
Okay. Now, first of all, we're caught in a dilemma, because we're at work. We're somewhere in the business world, and the business world is not a helping culture. It's not there to help people out that are having a hard time, okay? The bottom line for business is it's a money-making culture. And so you've got to take time out of that money-making culture to help somebody, right? Plus, there's a legal context. It's sort of like, well, I don't want to go in there and do the wrong thing. But the thing is that there's a possibility of being able to blend the two, okay? We actually become the best productive people that we can be when we feel that we're in a group of people who are being fellow humans, when we're being accepted just for being ourselves and we can actually be ourselves. So we're kind of caught up in this packaging problem. There's a whole lot of buzzwords going around in Australia. We have this wonderful workplace thing called Are You OK? Which are just 4 letters, but they're 4 words that you can ask somebody to see if they're okay inside their head, because a lot of people aren't. And the idea is that you just go up and you ask somebody some sort of a question like, are you okay? Or, hey, you just seem a bit down at the moment. Or, look, can we catch up? Or just make some contact. But here's the thing. Whenever we get an idea, and this goes for all of our society, we package it. We try to make sure that it gets out there, that it gets marketed, that it has a good impact. And then what happens is it becomes part of the marketing culture and it loses that human element. And it's that human element that makes a difference. And I suppose, Dave, that's what I want us to focus on, how we can actually have that human element.
How important is it if you're going through a tough time at the office or anywhere, but let's just say at the office, and I'm one of your colleagues, and I ask you that question, how important is it for you to already have a positive perception of me? You know what I mean? Like just because I ask you that question doesn't mean you might want to talk to me about it, especially if you don't like me, for example.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And because of this very thing, we're afraid of asking that first question, because I hate to say it, Dave, but we're all growing very cynical in today's culture, all right? Because people come up with pat answers to really complex questions, and we try to get ideas out there rather than just being human beings. So what I wanted to do is give a little formula that takes a whole lot of theory on suicide, boil it down to its really essential elements, and then translate that to only 2 things that you've got to say or get across in a human way to, quite frankly, save somebody's life.
Okay. All right.
All right. So this comes from what's called the Thomas Joyner theory of suicide. So basically, this was a theorist who, a couple of decades ago, looked at the question, why do people kill themselves? And it's called the interpersonal theory of suicide. And basically, he came up with two things. Firstly, somebody has to want to kill themselves, and they have to overcome fear or pain to actually do that. All right. And there are two things that make people want to kill themselves. They actually believe that they feel like they're a burden on other people. They actually believe that they feel that they are worth more if they are dead. And the second thing that makes people want to check out of here is that they feel isolated and disconnected from the rest of society, that somehow they're cut off, that nobody's listening to them. And that's actually the most important factor. To boil a whole huge theory down, it comes down to two things. I want to feel that I belong. I want to feel that I'm useful. At an office, everybody wants to feel useful. They want to know that their job that they are doing is making some sort of a difference, no matter how small. And people want to feel that they belong. So quite frankly, if somebody's going through a hard time and you notice, and all that you go and do is say, hey, John, I've noticed that. That's already amazingly powerful. Somebody noticed that I'm going through a hard time here. Somebody's not just here for the business, for the money, to do what the protocol says. Somebody noticed me as a human being. And just saying something like that can make somebody belong, feel that they belong. If the other thing is, if you possibly can, make a person feel that they make a difference, you know. Gee, John, I see that you're feeling a bit down, and gosh, I've seen some of the good work you do around here. What's going on? Just with that phrase, you could already have saved somebody's life.
Right.
Because you noticed them, which means that they're a human being, and you've appreciated that what they do is noticed, so they feel useful. Mm-hmm. And so it's really a sense of cutting through the crap. It's a sense of let's get rid of all the packaging of what we need to say. Let's cut through the idea that we don't know what to say. All that we have to do is be a human being. That's it. And if somebody feels that, then you could already be saving a life.
There's so many directions we could take this. You mentioned this during our last conversation, that feeling of belonging and that feeling of usefulness.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you think about the office, a lot of my conversations can be with clients, sometimes are about the simplest of things. Yes. For example, you know, when I'm talking to, say, a salesperson who's having a problem with their manager, you know, they don't like the manager, they're annoying, whatever. Sometimes the manager unintentionally diminishes the meaning of the job. So for example, I might say to you, if you're in sales, if your numbers aren't where they should be, I might just say, how many calls did you make today, Dr. Christian? Did you get on the phone today? And reduce you to nothing more than a robot that makes calls. And there's more to success in sales than just banging the phone. So to that, you know, if we could build off that a little bit, how often are we as managers or VPs or whatever reducing the significance of the role to nothing more than, you're not going to have a robot do that thing? Does that factor into how somebody might feel useful?
Well, that's why I preface this by looking at the clash of cultures, okay? Because the bottom line is that if a business does not make money, it will not exist, okay? So that has to be there. And everybody actually understands that. But you see, when you do that day in, day out, and it's the grind, okay, there's the feeling that you become nothing but a robot or you're nothing but a number. Now, that's actually not true, but we need little reminders that that's not true. So let's say a manager does have to say to somebody, you know, your performance is coming down, right? What's going on, all right? Just sort of saying something like, John, I've known you for years. You've put in some hard yards and done some great stuff for here. But lately, something seems to be missing. Is there something we need to talk about? So it's just putting into the context that I know you, you're a human being, and I saw what great things you were able to do. And I don't see that at the moment, because if you're a manager, you've got to be able to have those conversations. We can't tip down on eggshells around each other,
Right. But if we've historically had a contentious relationship, instead of like, would I have more credibility if I just said, look, I know I'm a dink, you know what I mean? I know historically I'm not the easiest guy to be around and I've been tough on you. I get that. But right now I'm concerned. Do you have any thoughts on how to transition the historic nature of the relationship, if it was contentious, into a more beneficial relationship? Do you follow what I'm asking?
Dave, you did it just then. Okay. It's just like when you said, look, I know I've been a dink. I know I've been down on you. All right. Right there, you leveled with me. Okay. You said, look, I'm a human being. I've got faults. All right. I know I'm in a position of power, but that's my job. All right. I'm letting you know that I'm human. And what that does is make it safe for somebody else to be human. Because this is the whole thing. We don't need skills to be able to save lives, because nobody can ask that of anybody else, all right? All that we have to do is have the skill to connect as a human being. That's the all-important thing. And it may just be in the eye contact. It may just be in a quirky smile. It may just be in putting yourself down a little bit, as you just did, okay? Or it could be a touch on the shoulder to say, look, I know we haven't got on terribly well, but right now, man to man, boy to boy, jerk to jerk, whatever you want to say, but, I'm concerned, all right? And humor always helps, but if you're not good at humor, then don't use humor. You just got to be yourself.
And I know that a lot of people get into management not because they've got the people skills or the emotional intelligence or the intellectual skills to do the job. They get into management because they've got a master's degree or because they were a solid in the role, but they don't have, they really don't have the right yet to be leading other people, developing other people. So if I don't have those skills and I'm in a leadership role, and then you're telling me I should do this, I could be one of those managers or people in charge that thinks this is not my job.
That's right. That's right. Because the bottom line is, you're right. It's not your job. Okay. It's the job of psychiatrists and psychologists. Okay. And that's the reason that I'm saying that I can't expect anybody. Look, I know that listening skills help a lot, but we're not all going to go out there and all of a sudden learn how to listen and have all these big listening skills. I'm actually not asking people, doesn't matter what their station in life is, to all of a sudden become counselors. Because everybody has to be a manager, a salesperson, a janitor, or whatever we are, we've got to be. But there is one thing that I can ask, and that is that you be a human being. Because that's the thing that we're starting to lose in this era of technology, hyper marketing, because our marketing psychology is just so refined. We know how to package things. We know how to package things so well that we're losing the thing that we're packaging, all right? So if we're trying to package good mental health, rip off the packaging, say, look, I don't know the words to say, but I'm just concerned about you. And mate, I just want you to seek help if you need it.
I have these conversations on a somewhat regular basis.
Right.
There's sometimes where I will start to feel like if I'm going through a tough time, there are times where I start to feel selfish for thinking those thoughts. Like, I'm down this or I'm bummed out about that. And I've run into people who their whole life is being down and bummed out, and it's become their story, their narrative. And there's part of me that feels like it's selfish. It's totally selfish. You're so caught up in the thoughts you have about yourself and how you fit in or don't fit in that you're missing an opportunity to really pay attention to other people. To what extent is it the responsibility of the person who's going through a tough time to maybe get over themselves in that moment?
Yeah, ultimately, Dave, it is the responsibility of the person to seek help. Okay. So what you're saying is right. It is not the onus on a manager or even a colleague to actually go and rescue somebody. It is on the person to say, I'm going through a tough time and I'm going to put up my hand for help, right? So that's the bottom line. However, in the last couple of decades, because our society has become so risk intolerant, all right, we've actually put up more barriers to people putting up their hand and saying, I need some help, right? The stakes are higher. The shame, the idea that you might lose your employment, okay, or all of a sudden you become a complex person on the team, all right? Because we're all honing in our business skills, society wants us functioning at a higher level. That's more important because that's how we do stuff, okay? Nothing wrong with that, but a side effect is it makes it that much harder for somebody in crisis to put up their hand and say, I need some help.
What are the consequences of putting the the worst case scenario in front of anybody, whether they're going through a really tough time or they're just having a bad day, two different things. If the worst case scenario, if you're afraid of losing your job, for example, it's like, all right, well, let's just say this, you lose your job. Let's just say you get fired or you don't have money right now. Is there any damage you could do to somebody by forcing them to face the possible reality?
And this is a very delicate situation because what you're saying is, if you are just in your face with somebody saying you need help or trying to force somebody, then yes, you could do damage, right? But there's one way that you can't do damage, and that's by being a human being. Whenever you level with anybody, and this is why it's actually so much easier for a cleaner to tell a CEO that, Mr. Jones, you seem so stressed at the moment. Are you getting the help that you need? That is easy for a cleaner to do. But for a CEO to tell a cleaner, you're looking stressed out, you better go get some help. Okay, there's this power imbalance that can really put somebody really on edge. So one of the questions to ask is, am I the right person to talk to Mr. Smith about what they're going through? It's not as though people in the workplace have got time or expertise to be on the lookout for people. But as human beings, all right, you get a feeling somebody's not doing too well. Something's different about that guy today. And just to sort of say, hey, is it okay with you? Okay. Do we need to chat? All right. Yeah. As long as you look somebody in the eye and they feel that you are being human, you're not just following some HR protocol, they will actually be touched, right? That's what makes the difference.
What about the people, though, that don't show any signs of anything? You've heard about these people, on the surface, they look like they've got their stuff together. They make a lot of money. They've got a nice house. They've got a perfect looking family, whatever. They just look like they're together. And then you hear about people like that going off the deep end or, ending things. How do you spot that? What would you say to somebody who, where you almost feel like, why would I ask that question? That it almost sounds like the question of, hey, how are you doing today? Even though it's valid, could feel misplaced, right?
That's right.
So what do you do in that
situation? It could. And well, Dave, to answer that question, I'll tell you a story because this happened to a colleague of mine. Okay, many years ago in another place in time. Okay, I used to be part of a group of doctors that were musicians, and we used to get together in a band and make music. Okay, and there was one of these guys. Okay, he was a specialist. And he played the clarinet, and one day he wasn't there anymore, okay? And then we find out that he's taken his own life and he's left a wife and 2 kids, right? And this was while I was a junior, and some of his closest friends were psychiatrists, but he had such a well-developed mask that nobody knew what he was going through. In fact, the closest people to him still do not understand what was going through his mind for him to take his own life. And that's a really sad story. And fortunately, it tends to be an exception. People who need help will put out some sort of a cry for help somewhere. But the problem in all of this is, and that was many, many years ago, a few decades ago, in fact, we have developed a society where we all put on more of a mask, where we all feel that we can't quite say exactly what's going on. So the stakes are higher and the consequences are worse. And the statistics show that we're moving in the wrong direction. Doesn't matter what we try to put in place, which is why, and you'll get sick of this, Dave, I'm going to come back to got to be human.
I just wonder, are we getting to a point where I'm too concerned about what I think and what I feel? I'm just going to put myself on the line. There's 7 billion people in the world, roughly.
Yes.
What difference does my thought and feeling today about you or anything matter in the end, when really, when you think about it? I had a conversation over the weekend with a friend. We're at a high school graduation party, and we were just talking about life and, solving all the world's problems. And he ended up sending me a poem over the weekend, not one that he wrote, but one that it reminded him of the conversation. And, in the end, what I think and what I feel and what I accomplish and what I accumulate and all that and how I fit into the pecking order, it doesn't matter. Because if you think about the people that are most memorable in the history of the planet, they were not people that had anything. They were not people that, rose through the ranks or held a title or accumulated wealth or anything. They were only people that made a difference for other people. So that's why I go back to the selfishness thing, is if I'm sitting there worried about me and trying to figure out how I fit in as a person, if I'm going through that, I wonder, like, what's my point? Am I just wasting my time here? Am I wasting my time here?
Yeah. So you're basically asking about selfishness.
Yeah.
And And so with selfishness, okay, so we've got a really prosperous society, but there's a few side effects to that prosperity. And one of those side effects is the advertising and marketing machine we have focuses in on the individual and focuses in on individual happiness, contentment, and pleasure. Because if we can focus in on that, we can get people to part with their money. And of course, the more money that turns through this society, the more prosperous we get. But by doing that, we are all actually becoming what I call hyper-individual. And selfishness and narcissism, we have the stats, is on the rise. And you see, I'm going to go into this romantic life that we used to have in the 30s, right? When people used to live in their own village and people knew everybody in town, okay? And they got so bored of the town because they saw the same faces every day that they wanted to go and do something for themselves. And they go out on a hero's journey, okay? And we like all of that. But we've given up that sense of collective belonging, because that's what it comes down to, belonging. I belong to a town, and all these boring people know me and kind of love me on some level, even the people who don't like me, okay? We kind of belong together. Well, you see, because everybody in town is sort of going out on their hero's journey, there's nobody in town to love us anymore, okay? We get back to town and we're by ourselves. And that's heartbreaking, Dave, because I actually believe all of us feel this on some level, all right? That maybe the price that we have paid is too much. However, I like to be hopeful that even the marketing machine that we have and the prosperous society that we have will be able to wake up to know, you know what? A sense of belonging to a community is really important. And that's what we've got to bring back. In fact, I'm going to segue into a study on suicide prevention that was done in Japan, and they halved the suicide rate in 3 years. And the way that they did it was they got the community involved. They got elderly people that were at home watching television and not knowing what to do with their lives, delivering pamphlets saying our town has been nominated to become a suicide prevention town. Okay, this is what we're doing, and this is what we want to try to do. So what happened was people who never got together, all of a sudden were getting together and distributing these pamphlets, and there were other people that were trained in listening skills, other people trained to just show people where they needed to go for some help. And because it was a community-based effort, people, they fulfilled the two things that I talked about in the Joyner suicide model. People felt they belonged again, and people felt useful again.
Yep.
And so, in a sense, although they trained up some counselors and they had all these pathways, it wasn't just that prevented the suicides, because they did almost halve the suicide rate. It was because they had a community effort where people felt they belonged to the community and they felt useful.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And it's hard to do that in big cities, I acknowledge. It's hard to do that over a huge society, I acknowledge. But you can do it in your town, or you can do it in your firm.
I don't know how hard it is. It's simple. I mean, when you think about what you're saying, there's nothing hard about it. But we're working against this. You talked about marketing and branding. If I hear somebody else talk about, your personal brand, again, I'm going to throw up all over the place. I know I've got one and you've got one. I get that.
But I'm glad that you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, who cares? Like my personal brand, if my personal brand is not helping you, if it's not making a difference for other people, then I should throw it out the window. And if you look at, over the course of time, how many really successful people with unbelievable personal brands are dead right now, early. That's right. You look at all the biggest, musicians from the 80s, Michael Jackson and Prince and Whitney Houston and George Michael and all these people, they're gone. And I wonder, could they not handle like the pressure of maintaining whatever that brand was? At the end of the day, if your brand is not helping somebody else, you should get rid of it. You're going down the wrong path.
Dave, that is absolutely right. Okay. And all the people that you mentioned actually bought the idea that fame, celebrity, and money will buy you happiness. Okay. And here's the really strange thing about our society. We keep those dreams alive to keep the economic wheels turning. All right. Yeah. But it's dangerous to actually believe it.
Yeah.
Okay. So David, I'm going to give you a personal story, because you said that you've got a brand and I've got a brand. Okay. And we've been doing this brand stuff for a couple of years now. Okay. And you know what? You get your kicks when you see the numbers going up. You think you're making more of an impact when the numbers are going up. And then we found ourselves in a stage where the numbers weren't going up, and we were in a bad mood. Okay. Things were going bad. And now, and we had this talk several times, but just recently we sort of said, stuff the numbers. We don't care if they go up or not. What we want to know is that we're actually making a difference to people out there. And this is what I feel that you're doing. And this is why we're having this conversation. Because if we can actually make a difference to people out there, it doesn't matter if I had 1,000, 10,000, or 100,000 followers, okay? The goal is in making a difference to your fellow human beings.
Right. And if you're focusing on your personal brand, it's always about me. It's always about me. And then don't I become less relatable to you? Like if the perception of me is, oh, this guy's up here, I can't even relate to that. When we've got a whole world building a personal brand and feeling heard, I'm so sick of, if I want to feel heard, then I better first pay attention to somebody else. If I want to feel heard, like it's my job to listen to other people. And if I do that, then they will likely listen to me. And if they don't, well, there's a bunch of other people that might. But I think if we spend our time trying to fit the world into what we need, we're screwed.
Yeah.
we're just screwed. But again, to your point, we're up against this whole economic machine that knows that it can prey on the limited, how limited we are as people. And I just think like the only answer to it, Doctor, is for us to constantly take care of ourselves and educate ourselves. And it doesn't have to be in the form of a school. You can read. I mean, even doing these podcasts, I've been able to read a bunch of books just because of the people I'm interviewing. They'll send me a book, I'll read it and I'll interview them. You just learn so much, but we're in a quick fix society where reading is even, out the window. It's all, sometimes I listen to books on tape, but I know a guy that listens to books on tape like 3 times the speed. And what are you even learning? I mean, that doesn't even count. So, I mean, that's the whole thing. We're in such a, I don't know where I'm going with it. It's just that we're in such a quick fix, hey, you want to feel this way, you want to feel that way, that we're missing the opportunity to focus on this human side, which to me, my job is to understand you. If you're going to come on my show, I've got to be interested in you, right? I mean, in order for you to feel like you belong, right?
Okay. Dave, you have really hit upon something here. I'm going to take you back to something that you said through all of that. And that was that, if I'm going to listen to you, that means you've got to listen to me first, okay? And I've just got to tell you how true that is, because that runs to the core of my work as a psychiatrist. Because one of the things that I love doing, all right, is building up trust with people. But the only way to build up trust is not telling them what they've got to do. You've got to shut up and do a whole lot of listening until somebody goes, this guy understands what's going on, okay? I will start to listen to him. And so that becomes a core feature. And this is listening. And the psychologist is actually Carl Rogers, who put together a whole system of listening. And if we all as human beings could listen to each other more, okay, we would start to care about each other more. But exactly what you said, we do things so fast now that we just do not have the time to listen to each other, because listening to somebody takes a whole lot of time, okay? Mm-hmm. And somebody could have listened to 3 books while you listen to one person, and the thing is that we are speeding things up because we want to make more and more money and get more and more things out there. But we need to make that, to have that question, why? Why are we doing all of this? If we're going to miss the essence of life, in other words, being human beings, why are we doing all of this?
Why do we shortchange the long path? The person, you know what I'm saying? Like, I understand what you're talking about, but like, why is it that what you're saying, which makes total sense, which obviously is a healthier path, a happier path, why is it strictly an economic thing where we're going to mislead an entire world into believing some bullshit so that, because we can't make money on the real stuff?
Well, okay, I'll give a neurological answer to that, because I think one of the key things is that we have discovered, that is, marketing psychologists have discovered the power of dopamine hits, all right? So there are kids, teenagers in Africa that would rather have an iPhone than the next meal, okay? Because you get instant pleasure. And the brain reacts very quickly to instant pleasure. And yes, we are giving up the long-term pleasures, because the long-term pleasures, like being in a long-term relationship, okay? Anybody who's been in a long-term relationships will know that it's a truckload of work. We want all the good stuff, but we don't want to do the work, okay? Or the sense of belonging, which is mediated by endorphins, all right? You actually get that from singing with people or laughing with people together, creating an atmosphere where you just chill and enjoy yourself. But as soon as you bring a screen in, we take eye contact off each other and put it on that screen, okay? And this is the real, well, it's one of the real problems. And I can't say that that's everything, but it's pervading our kids' lives, kids in third world countries, and all of us, I have to tell myself to stop watching stuff on screen to talk to other people.
Yep.
I'll just give you a personal example of that. I give myself 1 day a week when I do not open a computer or a screen, okay? You know, it's really interesting what happens on that 1 day. The last time I had that day, I counted. I made 7 phone calls to people that I hadn't spoken to for a while, because I had a rule that I wasn't going to go seek out, you know, just another piece of information. Or you start to have a conversation with the person over the back fence.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Can't do that if you're both on screens, you know.
It's true. There's this weird thing that if you don't have the phone with you, you're going to miss something. But when you
That's
actually don't have it with you, it's liberating. It's liberating.
Right.
You know, I work out of the house, so I don't have the distractions of being on the road or having to go into an office. But there are times I have to leave my desk and I just go out to the garden. I water the tomato plants. I water the cucumber plants, the peppers. I weed it a little bit. I take little 15-minute respites just to keep my head away from this. And it's great. It's a great feeling. The other thing, you know, I think to myself, if I go to a party or a social gathering, 90% of the, maybe more, maybe 95% of my time, I am just engaged with somebody else. I love either playing a game with them, whether it's a yard game or listening to music or having a conversation. And I leave feeling so strong, like so powerful just from connecting with other people. There's nothing to me that's more fueling than that, which goes back to your whole point of feeling like you belong. And the key to feeling like you belong, from what I'm gathering here, is to make a difference for somebody else. Like if you actually make a difference for somebody, you're going to feel like they're going to think you're a great person.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It just comes back. But
yeah, it does.
I guess the question, we could keep going and going and going, but like the question to me is it ever going to get to a point where what you're saying is the norm, or are we going to be like 1,000 years old still talking about the same stuff?
Well, Dave, I hope not. I hope it won't take 1,000 years, all right? Because it's just amazing how in 2 generations, we've gone from people that had a lot of time for each other to people that are so busy and so caught up in a treadmill, all right? And it's bizarre because in the 1990s, I actually attended lectures on what we are going to do with all our leisure time, because we won't have to work anywhere near as hard as we do. We'll all have part-time jobs and we'll be bored because we will have so much time to spend with each other. Now, of course, since then, we've discovered that human nature just likes to get in a treadmill. There's something about the brain, because it's such a powerful universe, that it wants to be fed. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that getting out into the garden as you do, to do some gardening with the tomatoes, or to talk to a neighbor over the fence, as I sometimes do, it takes initial effort. And, you know, as soon as you open your screen, okay, you're going to get instant gratification. It doesn't take much effort before your brain feels good. But by the time you make yourself get out into the garden, put on some boots, okay, some gloves, and decide what you're going to do with that garden, the first 5 minutes doesn't feel too good. The next 2 hours feel fantastic, right? Mm-hmm. But it's that 5-minute hump that we've got to find some way of getting across. And at the moment, I don't know anything better than education and experience, okay?
So if you could give advice, just generic advice to anybody who knows somebody that's not, whatever, they don't feel useful, they don't feel like they belong, or maybe it's themselves.
Yeah.
Is it as simple as every day when we wake up, just be conscious of the person or the people that are with us? It's be conscious of those 2 things with anybody. Like yes. even if I don't feel like I fit in, shouldn't I be able to say that? Like, doctor, I don't know. I don't feel like I fit in here, and give you the opportunity to either help me sort through that, or maybe be honest and say, well, Dave, you don't fit in. And I don't know. I mean, so is it if we just have a consciousness about it and this human piece to it, is that what your advice is, or am I minimizing it?
No, you're not minimizing it, because, okay, so I'm doing a bit of packaging here myself, all right? I want to make this message as simple as possible, right? And so I'm boiling it down to one word, be human, okay, which consists of two things, belonging and usefulness, right? So yeah, I have to do some packaging too, because I've only got a couple of minutes. You've only got a couple of minutes to make an impact on somebody else's life, but it can make a lifetime of difference. And the other thing I want to talk about is, you said, well, what do we do? When we get up, do we need to remind ourselves of this? And as a psychiatrist, I do work a lot with reminders, right? And it's like you've got so many people trying to grab your first 20 minutes of the day, spend it in meditation, spend it in stretches, spend it sort of going over your goals, spend it, sort of however. And I'm going to say, spend the first couple of minutes of your waking hours reminding yourself that you're a human being, not a human doing, and that you like to belong and you like to be useful, and everybody else feels the same way. So that when you look at somebody else and you just go, how you doing, or good morning, as you pass them, that little bit of eye contact, right, can make somebody go, oh my gosh, I just passed a fellow human being. Now, they don't actually say that. They usually say, what the hell did that jerk want?
Yeah, that's usually what people say when I walk by. What the hell is he looking at? One more thing, and I know we're going longer than I said we would go, but
yeah,
I
know, that's fine.
One more thing that is just sticking with me, and I think about all the social issues that our world faces today, and quite frankly is faced for forever, whether it's racism or sexism or whatever the ism is.
Yeah.
How much does, we talk about personal branding and labeling and all that stuff, but also, when we are generic about people,
yeah,
how much are we limiting anyone's ability to belong or feel useful? Like, for example, if I just said, well, he's a clinical psychiatrist from Australia, and you're in this bucket, like, that's what he is. I mean, you could be great, you could not be great. Does it matter that you're from Australia? Like, I could never be generic about the country and continent of Australia. There are good people and bad people and boring people and exciting people, but we are just labeling the hell out of people: black, white, gay, women, blah, blah. I mean, and everyone seems to want to decide or this is how these people think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is that playing on our ability to fit in and belong and have conversations because we're so busy categorizing people?
Well, Dave, what you say, I believe, is true, in that we start looking at people and we say, that person's black, that person's white, that person's European, that person's gay, or whatever, okay? And this is why sometimes I think I'm the luckiest person in the profession that I have, because everybody that I've spoken to, you get past the labels pretty quickly to find out that they are a human being, and they're pretty damn unique in what they like and what they don't like. And that's the thing. In a way, we need to get back to this collective of, we are all human beings trying to get through this crazy thing called life.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And we all belong to the family of human beings.
Okay.
Right?
I agree. What you're saying is exactly how I feel. But the messaging, the global messaging, is not that. Excuse me, I'm choking up as I'm talking to you. But the global messaging is not that. We are everything is about this community and that community and this community. And I get it. We all have our communities. I totally get it. But if you came to my neighborhood, you might like 70% of the people and not like 30% of the people.
That's right.
But so we can't really be labeled as a neighborhood. It's that guy's a nice guy, that guy's funny, that guy's boring. And I know that we're all these other things too.
Yeah.
But like when you watch, like when you listen to the way information is distributed globally, it is so limited. It is so, this how this community thinks, or this gender thinks. It's like, come on. You know, I don't buy it. I think we have to come down to this whole human thing that you're talking about, which I agree with. I've just got to look at you as Dr. Christian. That's it. And so you're your own little universe, you know, and I've got to decide, am I interested in that? And then can I understand Dr. Christian? Caroline is different. She's a different person. I know she's not on here, but she's her person, right? So
that's right.
Isn't that the secret? Everybody's, you know, everybody's themselves. And I got to figure out, am I going to spend time to get to know this person? That's it. That's simple.
That's right. It is that simple. The difficulty is when we try to find answers to these things on a society level. What are we going to do as society? As a psychiatrist, I speak to individuals. And so I suppose what I ask is, Christian, what are you going to do about it? Dave, what are you going to do about it? And anybody who's listening, what are you going to do about it? Okay. So the more individuals we can say, look, just go out and treat people like humans. Okay. Invite everybody to the party, even the boring people. They can come to the party too. Right. Let them turn up, you know.
Right. They'll level us off. They'll level the loud people off. Right. All right. So I'll give you the last word. You decide how you want to package this up. It's your show. I'm just facilitating here. So where do you want to leave us?
Dave, actually, you've taken us in some really wonderful directions, all right? Because we started off talking about the workplace, and then we got on to technology, and we got on to packaging in all of society. But I suppose what I want to leave us with is the idea that we all do belong to the one family of the human race, all right? And look, you and I are not going to solve this world's problems of how we communicate things, but on an individual basis, we can all make a difference to the people around us. That's what happened in this study of Japan. There were people who were actually talking to their neighbors, right? And they said, are you a part of this? No, what? Do you want to be part of it? Oh, sure, I will, all right? And it's that feeling that you've just included another neighbor, right? And we have the opportunity to do that with the people close to us by reminding them and us that we are human beings. And that could be just eye contact. That could be a few encouraging words. That could be a touch. It could be turning off the iPhone at a party, you know, or it could be asking, are you doing okay? All right. I just want to let you know that there's another human being here. And if I'm getting that wrong, sorry, but I just want to see you do okay. Right.
Excellent. I think I'm going to need to make an appointment. Are you taking any patients right now? I think come in touch. Listen, I've enjoyed the conversation. I'm glad you were willing to do 2 of these with me, and it was just great. And it's just something I hope that anybody that's listening continues to think about this stuff and talk about this stuff. This was great. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, Dave, thanks for making the second effort, as Vince Lombardi said, because we got to do that to get that message out there that we are all human beings and we can actually care about each other, because deep down, we actually do.